lesson 10, the last Niyamas. Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara means the Most High, the higher powers, God, if you will. Pranidhana means letting prana flow, letting energy flow. We translate Ishvara Pranidhana as surrender to God. Now, there are yoga teachers who present yoga as a religion. And they just keep talking about God. But this is not a religion. This is a science of life. Where does the concept of God come from? All religions, in essence, started as a science of life. We call that an esoteric science. So all cultures and all continents have gone through a process of civilization where people started developing consciousness and started asking questions. And if you compare them, they come to the same conclusions. They just tell the story in a different way. I like to avoid the word God because it's a word that is so widely misunderstood and it's surrounded by dogma and mystery. But what does God mean? Surrender to God. Well, I've prepared you for this already. I have mentioned the concept several times already. Life is subject to a plan, to a logic. Life is subject to an intelligence that contains the entire universe. If that sounds strange, just try to imagine the miracle of life on earth. There is a reason why only, as far as we know, there's life on earth and not elsewhere, as far as we know. The universe itself is a miracle. There is an order in the universe. If there were no order, everything would crash. There are so many objects, planets, stars, flying around the universe. But they fly around in very strict patterns. There is a balance. There is order. Without it, there would be chaos and destruction. If you look at life on earth, life is only possible when the right conditions are there. There has to be a fixed bandwidth of temperature. If it goes a little bit higher or a little bit lower, all life would die. The planets that we know are too hot or too cold for life. Now that's only one element. For organic life, which is us, the plants, the animals, for organic life to exist, there has to be a certain amount of certain elements. Oxygen, carbohydrates, amino acids, proteins. And it just so happens that they are present on this little planet in just the right amounts, with a perfect bandwidth between which the temperatures fluctuate to allow life, organic life, to thrive. What is that logic? What is that intelligence that allowed all this to exist? Ancient people thought in symbolic ways because they were not educated. But they very deeply, intuitively understood the miracle of life. That is why we worship gratitude. Only it has become distorted for the wrong purposes. But it's the reason why we have holy mountains and holy rivers and holy forests. For us, modern people, we don't realize the miracle of it anymore. But ancient people who didn't have a supermarket to go to year-round, they were depending on that miracle. And it didn't always provide food when they needed it. So the appreciation for what God gives us, nature, the universe, that has led to worship, it has led to religion, with which there is nothing wrong, but the real meaning has gone lost. It has become dogmatic as a result. So I'm an atheist. If you ask me, do you believe in God? I used to say no, but now I will say, if you have a minute, please sit down, then I will explain, because it's a long story. Because first I have to explain what I think is God. God is the universe, the intelligence, the consciousness that is out there. What does that mean? And how is that related to our yoga practice and the previous 9 subjects that we have studied so far? This is about keeping ourselves healthy, physically and mentally, psychologically. Because if we see things in compartmentalized ways and believe in coincidence, we are always the victim of everything. Or we are lucky when good things happen. But we never see the law of cause and effect at work. We never see the plan that the universe has and is playing out in our daily lives. Because we are blind. We are seeing the world like this. We don't see the whole picture. After the last subject, self-study, many people who develop consciousness, yoga students, they go through a period of emotional instability because you become more sensitive, because you become more conscious, because Svadhyaya, self-study, occurs spontaneously. You become aware of yourself, including many things that you don't like. That can lead to temporary emotional instability. Emphasis on the word temporary, because you will overcome that, especially if you study yoga properly, not only practice but also study. There are examples of people who practice yoga without studying who end up in deep distress, emotional distress. And they say, wow, I'm practicing yoga every day, I'm supposed to be happier and healthier, and why do I feel so miserable? I just want to cry. I've had people who come to me and exactly said things like that. And I said, that is part of the process you are in. That in itself makes people feel comfortable. That they realize that it's not only them, but every yoga practitioner has to go through that. Then I also tell them, you practice yoga, and that is really good, and you practice every day, but what you now need is a systematic approach. And that is what we do in our course. I cannot give you an instant solution or an instant answer, but you will find all the answers you need if you come to the course, if you join the class. Surrender to the Most High, surrender to God, surrender to the universe. I kind of integrated the explanation in Svadhyaya when I told you that the way to deal with this is contentment. To deal with daily life, especially when things seem to be against you, especially when things seem to fail, we have to realize that there is a reason for everything. Not only a reason and a purpose. And once you can see that, it becomes easier to accept things as they are. That is not easy. You'll have to experience it. But let me give you an example. I have been practicing yoga for 40 years. Whenever possible, I enjoy to be very stable, because the more stable you are, the more you evolve. And you become addicted to that stability. Every real yogi becomes, in fact, a very boring person. I say that with a smile, because that is the impression that people have from the outside. They think you're not interested in anything anymore and you're not doing anything anymore. While their activity is outward, external, your activity is internal. You're always sensing, always using your antennas, always trying to make concrete information about the confusing events that are happening all around you. So the moment that things mess up in my life, I can panic. Oh my God, how am I gonna handle this? What next? But I know how this works, so I try to find reason. I try to find purpose in what is happening, and it becomes easier and easier. 2 weeks ago, the owner of the studio told me, first she told me carefully that they are going to do a workshop in some weekend somewhere in May, so I have to find a way to work around that. And then she said, we're also going to do a renovation. Then I scratched my head and I said, what about after the summer? Can I still do my course here? And she said, actually, no. That is the moment that for me, my heart plunges down into my stomach and I think, oh my God, finally things were going well again and now this. But I know how it works. So immediately I think, there is a purpose for this. This is happening to make me move on. And so it happened. So instead of freaking out, panicking, I remained calm and immediately started looking for a solution. What's next? And because I remained calm, she actually gave me the solution. If I had freaked out and accused her of breaking the contract and what have you, she would not have helped me. But she led me to another studio, first next door and then to another one. And the moment that I called the owner of that studio, it felt right. She was so enthusiastic and so happy to accommodate us, and there's a chemistry that I don't have with the owner here. So there you go. And it's a bigger building. Probably I haven't looked at it, I should have, but they probably have more toilet stalls so that you don't have to wait in line next time when you have to go to the toilet. And there will be benefits for everybody. A much nicer and cooperative owner, and the room is as big as this one, maybe a little bit bigger, even square, and no pillar in the middle of the room. So instead of freaking out, I'm looking forward to the next development. Other examples. I came to Korea not being able to speak the language other than 감사합니다, 안녕하세요. That's 24 years ago. I did my thing, but things started to evolve. Started teaching yoga to people who understand English, communicate in English. But then it became official. I had to set up a company. I was here on a tourist visa, and that you cannot sustain for many years to come. So if you want to develop, you have to create stability and create a proper status. So I became a foreign investor and set up a foreign invested company. But I couldn't do that alone. You have to communicate with the bank, with the immigration office, with the notary. There's so many things you have to do. You need somebody. So my partner took care of those administrative things. But my partner was abusive. But I needed her. You know what it is? That's karma. She needed me, I needed her. But because of that, a karmic relationship is often it's not only very passionate, but it's also very confrontational. So that's just part of your development. Instead of accusing her of being abusive, instead of lamenting my life, being so miserable, I just drew my conclusions from it. I accepted it. I surrendered to the facts, just the naked facts. And I drew the conclusion, I have to go to school and learn Korean, so that I do not have to depend on others to help me in the future. And every time I'm in trouble, instead of blaming others for my misery, I project it onto myself and draw the conclusion that I have to work harder on myself so that those kind of situations cannot occur anymore. Now comes the cherry on the pie. When I thought that everything was really fine, I fell in love like a elementary school kid. Foolishly, stupidly, I fell in love, thinking that is the higher powers that are finally being in favor of me. The first year was very, very good, and then everything started going bad. Not only with the yoga center, with the fitness center, which changed owner several times, and every time they change owner, they start to rattle the cage and try to get rid of everybody working there. Everything started falling apart. I was experimenting with investing and losing money with that, and the gym started making trouble. And the partner that I had fallen so much in love with, so foolishly in love with, started to turn against me in a very strange way, kind of contempt. You understand the word contempt? Showing contempt in front of other people. So I tried to address that issue, talk in a reasonable way, never aggressive or blaming, or at some point I said, it was in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock or something. I said, I want to talk. Then she turned around and she didn't want to talk. So for me, that was it. So I said, it's better you leave. And she did leave. And that totally destroyed me. It took me more than a year to recover from that. When you hear me talking about that, I'm telling you the details how it led to that. Other people don't know. But people who know that I separated at that time, they think that she kicked me out. They think that she took the initiative to separate. But what happened is that I realized that when I fell foolishly in love, I had the delusion to think that it was the higher powers, the universe, that had brought that lady onto my path. I was naive, stupid, arrogant. My eyes closed. Love makes blind. They say for a reason, love makes blind. It's just an experience I had to go through to come where I am. Otherwise, I would have... It happened because I was stuck. And the universe then says, hey, if you don't listen, if you don't move on, if you don't move out of that box, here you have some trouble. Just suffer until you see the light again. It just had to happen. Surrender to God means that you see that the misery that you experience is there not to damage you, although that is the first impression that you have. It is there to build you, to make you grow, to make you evolve, develop, become more independent, become stronger. Surrender to God means understanding that it has a purpose. And the purpose is never to harm you. In the end, it's always designed to lead you to a better way, to a better life, to a better whatever it is. If you understand that, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble the next time when you have a conflict with your boss or your manager or your partner, for that matter. You will stop arguing. You will stop blaming, because you will replace arguing and blaming for investigating. Why is this happening? You don't point fingers except for yourself. Why is this happening? How did I get into this situation with this boss or this manager or this partner or this studio owner? How did I get here? And you have to be pure for that, because you have to be honest about yourself and your own role in that whole process. That is why it's of no use to blame other people. It's of no use to argue, because it just creates more misery, it just creates more bad energy. So, the first reaction is to freak out, but you very quickly gather your senses and you try to find the purpose in what is happening. Surrender to God is this: trying to understand the purpose of what is happening. And it, of course, applies especially to bad things, to negative things. Because good things we don't give much thought. It just makes us happy. It's when bad things happen that we suffer. And I realize every time again, when the dust settles down, I've become a better human being. A better teacher also. It makes a huge jump forward. So I started to appreciate the misery that I try to avoid it, of course. But you can't always. So when it happens, just try to find purpose in it, reason, because there always is. The universe doesn't want to just... The universe does give misery to you. If you want to call it God, God does give misery to you, but not to destroy you. If it destroys you, it's because of you, because of your ego, because you allow yourself to drown in that misery and not see the purpose of that misery, which is to make you grow and evolve and move on to a better place. In the beginning, that is not difficult to see, and you have to trust the philosophy. But knowing the philosophy now, next time, you will recognize what this is about. Not easy, you will panic, freak out, have anxiety, sleepless nights, but you will remind this. So you will investigate, you will try to see what's behind it. And when that happens a couple of times, you start to see a pattern. And when you see the pattern, you start to trust the philosophy. And that will be the foundation for you to not freak out anymore, to not suffer anymore. The first reaction is a knee-jerk reaction because we're human. There is an emotion that is being triggered, but you very quickly take control. And you say, oh, wait a minute, well, actually this was to be expected. Why is this happening? And what am I going to do about it? In 2015, the end of 2015, I had to leave the big gym where I had my classes for 8 years. Those were 8 very, very good years because of the stability. So I had time to write and rewrite these. I have thousands of pages of text that I wrote and rewrote, and everything got more structure, and I had so much opportunity to grow, and so 8 really good years, but it came to an end. I knew that it was going to come to an end someday. Already at the beginning of those 8 years. And this is the reason, I think I told you last week, why I started experimenting with investment. Because New Age, spirituality, yoga, it's not about hippies just carpe diem and just live by the day, by the moment. You have a vision that other people are lacking, and you know that someday it's coming to an end, and that is why you prepare. And you prepare very meticulously and very systematically. So in fact, yoga, spirituality, in contrast with what many people think, is very down to the ground, very realistic, more than other people. Because you know more, you see more than other people, including your future. So after 8 years that came to an end, and I was asked to move to a gym in the Seoul Finance Center in Gwanghwamun, downtown. Very nice place, beautiful building, many toilets. But the demands were too high. They wanted me to teach 3 classes a day, 5 days a week. And I had Saturday and Sunday all day course. So 7 days a week. And that really broke my back. I had to do it. I saw it as a challenge, as a test. That's what I do in life when things get difficult. I don't give up because I know this will not last. And it didn't last. After 4 months, they didn't. After 4 months, they said, the members are not so motivated, so let's cancel Tuesday and Thursday. So after 4 months of 7 days a week, at least Tuesday and Thursday, I could take a little rest. But it was not enough. The back was broken. And somebody visited me from the Korea Yoga Federation, and he said, I want to work with you. So I thought, oh, that's the universe. I have to be rescued because I'm burning up here. I'm burning out. And it seemed like the ideal thing to do. After 8 years, 9 years, including the 1 year in Gwanghwamun, with a very commercial fitness industry, I was finally going to work with the yoga organization, Korea Yoga, KYF, Korea Yoga Federation. But that turned sour very quickly because they know nothing about yoga. They just wanted to use me as a face for legitimacy of their federation. So, you know the word kaptil? Korean people know kaptil, especially. That was going on there. It was a money business, and they're very good at it. There are many yoga studios in Korea, and not so many are actually profitable. But they have a whole franchise system with. They have several brands under that franchise system. One is Arya Yoga, the other one is American Hot Yoga, and then they have something else. Anyway, they have hundreds of studios. And they make like 50 new studios per year. They open new studios per year. So they're and compared to other studios, membership is more expensive. And yet, they have more members than other studios where it's cheaper. So their marketing strategy is good. But that's all. For the rest, it's just a company where the manager thinks I'm the boss. So I can bully the people that work here, put unreasonable demands on them, manipulation, lies, false, empty promises. I was done there very quickly. I stayed for 6 months because I have to finish my course. I moved my Saturday, Sunday course there too, and that requires continuity. But after a few weeks I was already done, and I just set out my time, and then I moved. The purpose? Me being independent again. I started renting a studio like I'm renting this studio now for a day. I rented a studio in Nonyeon-dong for Saturday and Sunday. And I was so happy. I had no boss anymore, no manager anymore. I was independent. Well, that lasted for 1.5 years, and then I was done. Then I canceled everything, But why is this happening? The universe has a plan. It seems to go down the drain. But there's a plan. I had a dog, a white dog, so sweet. Her name was Vitya. But she was old, she was 15 years old. In the summer of 2018, she was done. She stopped eating and drinking, and I took her to the doctor, and he took a blood sample, and he said her kidneys don't function anymore, and her heart rate is over 200. So then I realized that she was dying, because also she didn't eat and drink anymore. But he didn't accept that. He tried to treat her kidneys, but I know she was suffering. She didn't complain, she didn't cry, but she was suffering. So then there was a weekend, so I couldn't do anything. So on Monday I went there again, and I asked him, I begged him, please help her to just go away peacefully, because she's in so much pain. She was trying to bury her head in the wall. Because of the high blood pressure, the high heart rate, she must have had a horrible headache. So he said, okay. Finally he agreed, because he refused before. But finally he agreed, and he said, but there was a customer before you, so please go back to the waiting room, please go back and wait until it's your turn. So my dog walked back and into the corner, burying her head in the corner again. So I took her back and wanted to make her comfortable, and then she collapsed. Her heart just broke, heart attack. So that was so traumatic that I said to myself, I'm never gonna have a dog anymore. This is so painful. But I can even see purpose there. Because I had vowed to take care of her and to until the end. And I had a feeling that I failed, because she should not have ended with so much pain. But it happened. So what is the purpose? It was so hard on me. I had a sense of guilt that when Pada came around in the park 6 months later, I felt a duty. I felt a duty to help another helpless creature. And because of the emotional roller coaster ride that I went through with my previous dog, I was the perfect person to do that. So that's the universe behind that. Can you see that? It's not like glorifying my previous dog's death, but it's giving it purpose. At least it makes sense now. That is surrender to God. Surrender to the universe or the higher powers. When you start seeing that, you will see purpose in everything that happens in your life, especially in your suffering, the negative things that happen. And the reason why this is the last subject of the yamas and the niyamas is because your conscious is now open, awakened, and you are going to see things that you didn't see before. And this is how you deal with that. So people who awaken, whose consciousness opens up, they have a tendency to lose themselves in emotional instability. They start to suffer. And yoga recognizes that. It is one of the diseases of the disciple, as it is called. But the fact that it happens does not mean that you have to stay stuck in it. That is what happens if you don't understand the subjects that are discussed or are not discussed at all. So when confronted with misery, it will hurt you more than other people. because you are more sensitive, because you are more conscious, because you have a heart. And many people think that is a bad thing. It is not. It is your biggest and most valuable asset in life. But it makes you very vulnerable. Because you are open to suffering, to hurt, that other people are totally oblivious from, free from. And this is how you deal with that. It seems like a total paradox until you are being handed a tool to deal with it in a rational and reasonable way. And that is acceptance. Not just acceptance because your parents tell you just accept it, because I say so, but acceptance based on understanding that there is always a reason and a purpose. And that reason and purpose is always designed for the better. It's not designed to just make you suffer for the suffering. The suffering is only a tool. It's like a kick in the butt. Like, hey, open your eyes, move on, do something about it. Questions? Yes.
When you're talking about the higher powers,
Yes.
would you say you were passive to the higher powers? Like you were being passive to the phenomena that are happening to you? Like, to me, it sounds that you were rather passive than active.
No, on the contrary. People who are passive, and there are many, actually it's very good that you make this remark. Surrender to God is being used for people to be passive. And they say, if God wants it, then it will happen. And in the meantime, they just stay in their lazy chair and do nothing. Because if nothing happens, then obviously that is God's wish. But what they don't know, because they didn't study so deep as we are doing, is that human beings are inherently lazy. And subconsciously there is a thought that says, hey, you don't have to do anything, just if God doesn't want it, then it won't happen. It's natural that but I'm trying to understand why the impression occurs that I'm rather passive about it, because on the contrary, I take action. Instead of becoming emotional or suffering, I roll up my sleeves and I take action. Because I know that is the purpose of what is happening. So first I have to try to understand why it is happening and what it is trying to tell me. And then take the next step. That's how I ended up from Yoido to Gwanghwamun to Yangje to Nonyodong to back to Yoido.
It's not like you chose to come to Niyama or Yoido, but like the studio got closed or they told you to go there. So that's where I got the question.
Yes, but the thing is, if you want to control everything mentally, you are fighting every day. Like the owner of the studio is fighting every day. Like almost all people are fighting every day. And they think that it's good. They think the harder I can fight, the more successful I am. The better I am. Well, we know now, that is not exactly how it works. Because things have a tendency to work out in a natural way. So we have to stay engaged. It's a very interesting issue that you raised there. We have to stay engaged, but we have to know when to disengage. You know? And there are people who say, well, if God wants it, then it will happen. And then they do nothing, so nothing happens. But there is an English expression. I don't know if it's British or American, or it doesn't matter. God helps only those who help themselves. So it has to start with you again. You cannot say, oh, God will help me, so I have to do nothing. God helps those who help themselves. You have to move. You have to take action. You have to have a good attitude. Positive, constructive. And then you notice things happening. You know how I dealt with that, or how I deal with that when I don't know what to do? I take care of myself. When things are falling apart, you have a tendency of losing control. And some people then start drinking and staying up all night playing games, or no, I do the opposite. I have a military discipline when I'm in difficulty. I exercise every day. I take good care of the dogs. I go to the supermarket, buy food and cook. I clean. That is the way that I stay in control over things that I can control. And while doing that, someday the phone rings. While I'm in a desperate situation, I think, now I'm desperate. I wish it will all end and I could just move to the bridge and jump off. But then I think, next year, if I look back to today, everything will be different. And I bridge that gap simply by keeping myself busy with day-to-day things, which is the basics of life. Never forget that energy is your most precious asset. When you collapse under the misery, that is the first thing that you lose. People get sick because of that. Disease occurs because energy is blocked. So you have to keep things together. I didn't know that I had that quality. But now I'm very confident. I know now that I can deal with the most difficult situations. I never believed in myself in that sense, but I know now that I can. Because it's like a switch is flipped in my brain and I just keep myself busy with things that I can control. And the rest that I can't control, I leave up to the higher powers. Because all those years of life experience have shown me that sooner or later, the right thing will happen at the right time with the right people in the right place. I started calling it the phone effect, the telephone effect. Because it's almost always accompanied by a phone call. Or these days it's more like a Kakao Talk or a message that comes in. So not passive at all. But you have to know when to stand back. And what do? Don't feel miserable. Keep yourself busy with maintaining yourself. Stay healthy. Exercise. Eat well. Eat good food. It's so tempting. It's so tempting to lose ourselves in unhealthy food, because that's comfort food. We call it comfort food for a reason. And alcohol or drugs or there are many ways to comfort ourselves, but often very destructive and really not making things better. remember, God helps only those who help themselves. You must do it. Then you will receive support. Really.
How did you raise your level of discipline?
Say again?
How did you raise your level of discipline?
Well, I think, as a teenager, I got lost together with my brothers. My family was dysfunctional. 7 kids with a father who was never there. And a mom. My mom was very good at caring, but only in a material way. There was no affection, no love. I can't remember my mom ever giving me a hug and saying, I love you. But there was always breakfast, there was always lunch, there was always dinner. She never said, oh, I'm so miserable today, why don't you go to the snack bar and or make yourself a sandwich? Always. So it's the military style of my mom. And, I don't complain about my teenage years of misery. Although maybe sometimes you get the impression, but it has given me all the qualities that I needed to have, and one of those is military discipline to stay in control. Because that is what I when I decided to go another way, away from what my brothers were doing, I started practicing yoga, and I did it every evening without fail. I stuck to it. And then I discovered Hapkido. And instead of going there 2 or 3 times a week, which people do, when in the Netherlands, when you go to a sports club, you don't go 5 days a week like in Korea. When you are a member of a taekwondo or Hapkido, you go every day. Huh? Like school kids with the bus, they go. In the Netherlands, it's more like 2 or 3 times a week, depending on how much you pay. I went there every day, and I started managing things and preparing tea and coffee for after class for the members, and I was there from 10 in the morning until 9 in the evening, including a half day on Saturday. That was my way of discipline. And often before going there, I would run a 5 kilometer around the lake. For me, that was a way to rehabilitate myself from the years of damage in my teenage years. And that I carried that with me throughout all those years that have passed since then, and it's only since recently that I realized I have that quality. It existed 30 years ago, I just didn't know it. It was just something that I kind of instinctively put into place, but I didn't have the confidence of having that quality. Now I do. Start with little things. You cannot from one day to another suddenly start exercising a lot and eating all healthy food and things, and because you have another life, you have a family to take care of, or you have a job, or both. There are so many things that make up our lives. It's not a thing that changes overnight. So start with small things. Start with small things and gradually expand. Things that are easy to control in the beginning, I think, is what we eat. When you feel attracted to eating something, it's easy to choose for comfort food, and you say, but let's choose something a little bit more nutritious. Let's choose something a little healthier. Or I always prepare my own food. I never buy food outside. I always have my red bag with me with my tea and my coffee and my sandwich, and I don't know. I guess I became eccentric. But that's not a bad thing. If you're very busy in daily life, you cannot, like I did at that time, spend 11 hours a day in a Hapkido. What you can do is 15 minutes of asana before going to work. Wake up a little bit earlier. Or after work. Sit down for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The longer the better, but 10 minutes, 15 minutes has an impact, has an effect. And it does give you a sense of being in charge. Start with small things and then see where it evolves in the future. To come here every Saturday, that's discipline. You have the discipline too. To go to work every day at the same time and stay all day in the office or the workplace or school, that's discipline. We just switch a little bit in a direction that you choose, little by little. I haven't really explained the name yet. Ishvara Pranidhana means letting prana flow. Letting prana flow to God. That's what it literally means. The reason why we need to surrender to the things that we can't control, and I explained how to surrender by trying to find reason and purpose in it. The reason why we need to do that is because our energy gets blocked. And that meaning you find in the word prana. Prana is ki energy, ki, or chi energy in Chinese. Ki, chi, that is your vital energy. If we limit this to spirituality, spirituality is only possible if there is energy on the higher levels of consciousness. But when we are confronted with obstacles, challenges, failure, conflict, our energy tends to drop down below the diaphragm, where our lower emotions and instincts are located. Survival, fear, doubt, worry, desires, ambition. Our energy gets blocked because attention occurs. When we surrender, even in the most difficult circumstances, we learn from contentment. Even in the most difficult circumstances, it's possible to feel good, to relax. But that's only if you're able to practice contentment, meaning positive thought. It's about mind control. There is a first knee-jerk reaction, panic, negative emotion, but you quickly take control and you change the way that you look at it. That is not easy in the beginning, but now that you are aware of it, it's something that you will start playing with in daily life. Daily life situations will be the playground that allow you to train yourself and grow. And I really hope next time when you find yourself in a very difficult situation that makes you miserable, suffer, that you remember to view that as an opportunity to grow. Not an opportunity to just become more miserable. That is the first reaction. But to see it as an opportunity to grow. That will change your chemistry if it is the new way of looking at misery, the new way of looking at conflict. Try to switch the mode of thinking to a mode of curiosity. Why is this happening again? Why am I suffering this again? Try to figure it out. That is, after all, the purpose of it. When you surrender, and this is also a very interesting element actually, and important. When you surrender and energy circulates again, guess what happens? You become contemplative. And when you are in a contemplative mood, you see the solution to a problem. As long as energy is blocked and contemplation just doesn't work because there is no energy on that level, you stay stuck and you drown deeper and deeper in the swamp. The moment you surrender, energy starts to flow again and you start to reflect. You buy a nice ice cream at the corner store, your favorite, strawberry or chocolate ice cream, just sit on a bench and just enjoy the ice cream, and suddenly, boing, the light goes on. And the light goes on, you understand the deepest, most complex issues when you're not thinking. That sounds really strange, but the pieces always fall into place at the moment of contemplation. That is when you're not thinking. And that happens when you clean the house, or while you're cooking, or when you walk the dogs in the park, or enjoy a lovely ice cream. The harder we think, the more our energy blocks. We just get a headache from it and no solution. The moment we just give up, we surrender. Boing, the light goes on. It's called an epiphany in English. You have an epiphany. But in comic books, when the character in a comic book has a bright idea, they literally draw a light bulb above the head, and that is literally what happens. The light goes on. Light in the crown chakra. You see complex issues, and the moment you see them, they're not complex anymore. That is the result of surrender. Okay, let's have a short break.